Thanks, Lexi. Also, apologies in advance. I am fighting strep throat, so if I don't have the usual opera voice that I have, I apologize.
Oh, no.
So
Sorry
I might be muting here and there, but yeah, it's great to meet you all. So I think, topic of this talk or workshop is finding jobs through your network. Short background on me. I have a weird background. I'm a multi-time founder, former YC founder, mixture of marketing, software engineering, recruiting, coding boot camps. I've helped hundreds of job seekers find jobs at this point at all sorts of places and companies. So hopefully my goal with this talk is to tell you things that you haven't heard before. You've probably heard a lot of job search advice. So what I'm going to focus on is misconceptions that I see a lot of job seekers have, and try to give you a lot of very specific tactical things and tools in your tool belt to try that you can actually try out during the workshop. And then we'll do more of a Q&A at the end. As we go to, it sounds like we'll have questions, so I'm happy to pause and go for those too. So on that note, I actually want you to open a browser window and get ready to flip between that and StreamYard, not Zoom today, while we go. Because I want you actually going on LinkedIn and the sorts of sites that I'm talking about just to get a feel for it as you go. And I might be yammering and I might tell some stories along the way just to add some color, but this is a workshop and I want you working on your job search because we want to get you a job. So open a window. And before I dig too deep into the details, again, I come from a marketing background, so I like to think of jobs as a marketing funnel. So think about the top of the funnel, right? You need to be aware of jobs in your network, right? And so there are some common ways folks do this: LinkedIn, Well-Found, Indeed, Dice, various job boards, right? There's like word of mouth, right? A friend tells you about a job. That's how you become aware of the job. Then there's the interest piece, right? So if you're, buying something online, right, there's you actually entering your email to become a user, right? Or signing up for the newsletter, that kind of thing. And with job searches, right, that's getting referred for the job. It's applying cold. It's somehow getting in the door, ideally in a way that skips the resume pile. So those are the first two layers of the funnel, right? Considerations like an interview, it's where you get to vet each other, make sure that there's enough intent to actually purchase, which is the job offer here, right? So I'm going to focus on the top two. That's really where my experience is and my expertise is to, again, tell you things you don't know. And we'll work down from awareness into interest, starting with awareness. So the biggest misconception that I see around awareness is that these job search platforms will show you all the jobs that are available. I think it's a good starting point, but you're not going to find all the jobs that you can get warm intros through and that you can get through your network this way. So there is a starting point here that I like people to try themselves just to see how it goes. A lot of people don't know about this filter on LinkedIn that's called the In Your Network filter. So in your browser window, if you click on the jobs briefcase on LinkedIn, open up LinkedIn, and type in the job title you're searching for. And I think almost everyone here is searching for software engineer, right? So where it says product manager on the top left, type in software engineer. And then in the all filters section, you have to scroll down a little bit, but there's this flag called In Your Network, which should theoretically show you the jobs that are open that are on LinkedIn in your network. Try it. Some folks will turn up results here. There are issues with this though. So this is me yammering while you poke around, but what you'll probably see is there are promoted posts that float to the top because companies are paying LinkedIn to show up first. The connections can be flaky. Sometimes you see good connections. LinkedIn also will consider anyone who has gone to your school to be a connection. So if you went somewhere where there are hundreds of thousands of graduates, you might not be able to ask them for an intro. But at least it's a starting point to see what's out there for you, right? But there's limitations. Same thing goes for these other platforms that you might be using, right? Like Well-Found, Dice. Those aren't based around your connections, and there's often limited coverage on them, right? So they're maybe integrating with a few applicant tracking systems. So if you've ever applied somewhere through Lever or Greenhouse or Workday or something like that, you might see the jobs that show up there, but they're not actually scraping the company websites or the career sites of the companies that they cover. So you're not going to get perfect job coverage around that stuff, but you'll get some floating up, right? And sometimes they rely on recruiters themselves posting jobs to those platforms. So again, start with that LinkedIn search. You might discover some new jobs in your network that you didn't know existed. There are some other ways that you can discover jobs though, and become aware of them, right? So one big one, if you didn't know, is people who are hiring will put the word hiring in their LinkedIn bio. So I want you to play around with this too, but if you go, I think you have to just type directly in the search bar on LinkedIn to access this. but type the word hiring. It should show a people search for you. And then if you add your first, then you can also try second degree connections on LinkedIn. Hopefully you'll see a number of folks popping up that says we're hiring in their bio. And a lot of these jobs that they're hiring for don't always show up on LinkedIn because they would have to pay to post them on LinkedIn. But you can find the people who are still hiring because they'll stick it in their title, and changing their title is free. So this is a hack that a lot of founders use themselves to like hire people without paying LinkedIn to hire people. So play around with that in your browser window. One other one that's good also on LinkedIn is posts, right? So I think from where you are, if you were searching for people who are hiring, also search for posts that say we're hiring, or search for posts with the phrase software engineer in it. And there's a bunch of filters you can use if you hit that all filters tab for posts that were in the last week or last day. You can see posts that were posted by first degree connections to you. So these are people who you may not realize just started hiring yesterday, right? And you probably know, if you've been in the job search for a while, the sooner you respond to a job post that's been put up, the more likely you are to hear back, right? So that date posted filter on the right, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but that date posted is a really important filter here. So play around with that. The last one I'm not going to spend too much time on is the tool that I'm building. So it ingests your LinkedIn connections and shows you all of the job posts that are open where you can get referrals through those connections, and it actually scrapes company sites. I'll give more on this later though. So that's what I'm building, but these are hopefully a few tools in your tool belt to become aware of jobs. One other more kind of general way to think about where warm jobs might live is if you combine an old background that you have with a new background, you sometimes have unfair advantages, or it generates ideas for people to talk with. So for example, if you used to, I don't know, be on the wait staff at a restaurant and then you became a software engineer, you might have a unique advantage applying to restaurant management software companies. One of my favorite examples of this was someone who minored in accounting in college, went through a code boot camp, and then became a software engineer at an accounting software company. They had an unfair advantage because they understood the user really well, and they were able to use their accounting contacts to meet people at the company to get the software engineering job too. So if there's stuff like that, another one, just because I know folks are looking for software engineering roles, is if you, let's say, work on infrastructure code or DevOps code at your current startup, you might have an unfair advantage applying to companies that serve DevOps engineers or serve infrastructure engineers. There might be folks there that you've met at conferences. It just tends to be more in your field and your network, right? Again, this is fuzzier, this is a little higher level, but something that people don't always think about when they're thinking about what companies to even find in the first place too. So that's the awareness piece. I'm going to spend more time on the interest piece because I think where most folks get stuck is in the resume pile and not actually getting to the interview. So a bunch of misconceptions here. The biggest one is that it's fine to apply cold. I think that's okay in some cases. I want to show you some stats that are backed up by my own personal experience around this too. You've probably seen these quoted, but referrals tend to make up maybe 10% of applicants max, but they tend to make up 40 to 80% of the actual interviews and hires. So the deck is really stacked in your favor if you can find a way to get a referral to a company. A lot of folks will spray and pray, they'll apply cold, or if they have a connection, they won't actually reach out. They'll assume that the company will figure out who their connection is when they apply, and they'll just apply a cold anyway. I do not recommend doing this. I strongly recommend reach out to someone there first, figure out the strategy before you actually apply, and then apply. And I'll talk a little more about this later. So it can work if your resume really pops to apply cold. I just want you to keep in mind, just to drive this home, most jobs get hundreds of applicants. Recruiters may spend seconds on your application if they look at it at all. I've spoken with recruiters who were so overwhelmed by cold applications, they didn't look at them. They only looked at warm referrals. When I went through YC, the advice was very strongly to just hire from within your own network. So sometimes it's the only way to get in the door. If you don't already have a connection somewhere, you can try to make a connection by cold emailing the right person. And I'll get to this later. But again, I would bias away from applying cold if you can help it, really bias towards applying warm. It's going to be a much higher hit rate. So first, how do you find connections at a company? Some people may already be doing this, but if you haven't yet, this is a really good way to find your connections at a company that you want to apply to, right? So let's say I'm applying to Adobe. I type the company name into LinkedIn. I look at the first and second degree people connections on LinkedIn. And then if I know I'm applying to a particular team, right? So in your case, maybe an engineering team, type in the title of software engineer in the all filters section on the right in the keywords section. And what that's going to do is it's going to filter down the results on LinkedIn just to people whose current title is software engineer on LinkedIn. So this might be table stakes for some of you, but worth doing. Yes. Lexi.
Asher, before you keep going, I just wanted to pause and ask the chat if, since I know they're doing it on their screen, are people running these and feeling like they have questions, or, oh, hi. Oh, people are talking to each other in the chat. That's funny. But are you trying these on your screen? Give us a little bit of like context before. I know everybody's just chatting with each other, but are you trying these on your screen? Anything not working? Are we going too fast? Give us a quick bit of feedback. Oh, nice. Thanks. Okay. Yeah. Just give us a little more. Like, it's weird being on this live streaming thing because like we can't see all of you. So give us a little bit of like, this is making a ton of sense. I'm a little bit confused, but I want to look at the slides. Give us a bit of feedback and then we'll keep going.
I'm also curious who's already doing this, right? I think, again, my goal is to give you like a couple things you haven't done. So if there's a show of hands, it's like, oh yeah, I already do this when I apply. I'm curious to hear that too.
Totally. We'll give people a second. But yeah, it's just sort of weird talking into the void. That's the lesson from this. Anybody else? Yeah. Have you done this stuff before? It says like 45 people are here. So I'm sure there's just like kind of a lurking vibe. I've been doing some of the company network filtering. I'm interactively following along. Some very cool tips so far. Very helpful. Cool. And yeah, if you, but I didn't know about posts and people hiring searches. Nice. Did not know how to filter this way. Not table stakes for me. I've been filtering this as well. Helpful. Searching post. Okay, we're getting a lot. Can you see these as well, Asher?
Yes.
Great. Okay, we will grab these two and we can like come back to the chat after, or even continue on a thread if we, yeah. Okay, I'm going to read through. Asher, keep going. I'm just going to kind of take any questions from there. That
sounds good. Okay. So another misconception is if you do have a connection somewhere, people still think that they should apply before they ask that connection for a referral. I want to try to dissuade you of doing this too for a few reasons. So the biggest one that I've seen is number of companies have a totally separate track if you apply warm, but you can't go down that track if you apply cold first. At larger companies, sometimes it's a separate application link. I know a job seeker who, when they asked someone for a referral, they didn't have to do any work. Their friend actually filled out an internal application for them and got them in the system. Took them zero work to land that interview, but that wouldn't have happened if they had applied cold. I know someone who landed an interview at the Federal Reserve because their friend told them specifically what keywords to put in their resume and cover letter that would get flagged by the system, so they got routed to the right team, right? So there's all these little ways that you get into these tracks that you just might not have thought of, that someone who is there, if you reach out beforehand, can help you with. Now, I saw someone post in the chat, right? Oh, I try to apply, but postings go down within 24 hours, so I have to apply quickly. The rule of thumb I recommend here is if you don't get a response or you don't have momentum with 2 days, that's when I would apply cold, because like you said, jobs can go down. It matters that they're fresh, all of that. But I really strongly would push you to try to reach out to someone first, just to ask even how to apply before you actually apply.
I will say as well, I talk to a lot of companies who post their job. My team reaches out. By the time I talk to them, the job listing has been down, but they're still hiring for it. They just got too many applicants too quickly.
Which also, by the way, if you reach out to someone at the company, they may still be able to get you in the door even when the job post is down too. Great.
You said, you see that last one, Asher, that they've gotten, yeah, never. I was going to say one other thing. I think you might get to this. I forget. But do you have the point of contact thing about who to ask? I forget.
Yes.
Okay, I'll go.
Yes. Yeah, well, definitely. So we'll cover a little bit around if you are going to reach out cold, how to do that best. Obviously better if you know someone already, but if you don't, there's some tactics there too. So cool. Just one other reason to ask for that referral first, if you're not yet sold. There is extra signal for the recruiter. So the fact that you took a step to find someone, that there's some sort of shared context with the person who's referring you, it's a little bit of signal that can still stick you out above folks who did apply cold. It shows that you put in a little extra work. And again, sometimes it's the only way in, right? Companies don't always check their cold applications. So anyway, I think you guys get the point. So I will move on. There's a big mental block that I see with job seekers, which is that they think acquaintances won't want to refer them. There's a couple ways I want to help you think through this and maybe overcome it. So what I want you to do is imagine you're at your last job or maybe your current job and think of an acquaintance that you have. I think someone who you went to high school with is pretty good. Maybe someone you were in a class with, not someone crazy, someone reasonable who, you know, it's like middle of the road acquaintance you have, right? And imagine they wanted a job at your company or the last company that you were at. And they came to you and said, hey, saw a product manager role on the site. Would you be willing to refer me internally? And think about whether you'd help them. Think about what you would weigh. Think about how comfortable you would be doing that, right? If they came to you and asked. And some of it definitely depends on the person, but naturally, you know, the next step is flip it, right? So it's actually going to be you reaching out to them asking for a job. And I think a lot of people don't realize how willing people are to help other folks and get them in the door at a company. Again, assuming there's like an okay relationship there, because people naturally want to help you, and getting a job is very meaningful for people, right? So as you find contacts at companies, do this role play with them and think, if they reached out to me asking for a job, how would I respond, right? And then apply that to yourself when you ask them. And that might help you with some of this mental piece.
I was going to add one thing here. The number of the wide spectrum of folks that have referred Leopard, for example, even you can see it in our sign up flow. No, it's not exactly the same. People are referred to Leopard by their therapist. They're referred by their hairdresser. We get clients because somebody I went to high school with referred us into the company. And so I would say, you know, instinctually, my guess is that many people want to, if when in doubt, the answer is no. I would say when in doubt, the answer is worth a try.
Also, there's a question on niche jobs that have stayed posted for months. You know, they stay posted because they're looking for a unicorn. I think that's true to a degree, right? Like there are going to be some jobs where you need to check the boxes of the job and the resume is going to be more important. And I think those are the ones where it's going to be easier to apply cold. I think companies tend to invest more in seeking those out. Like I remember there was a company that I helped hire for that needed a video streaming engineer. And so they tracked down all the people working on the particular video streaming library that they used. And they lived in, I think it was Finland or something. But the company put in the work to find them too. So yeah, I think it's going to be much easier to apply cold for niche jobs. And that heuristic, right, of what's my background combination of whatever I've been doing, like that's going to uniquely suit you even to apply cold somewhere too. So keep thinking about that as you apply to niche jobs. Great. Okay. One other big reason that it's okay for acquaintances to refer you is they get paid for it. They're especially for software engineering roles. I mean, if you haven't referred folks yourselves yet, you probably know there are thousands of dollars in referral bonuses for this. There's someone I know who worked at YouTube who they effectively had a Google form for anyone who wanted an internal referral, even if they didn't know them, just because they got paid for it. And I imagine the recruiters on the other end of that weren't thrilled with it because there wasn't a ton of signal through it. But the folks who went through that YouTube employee still got in the door and were able to chat with recruiters and get in an interview process, right? So people are very incentivized to refer you, especially for software engineering roles. A couple hacks around this that people don't always know about is there are marketplaces for referrals. So again, in your browser tab, search for Refer Market or refer.me. Those are a couple of the popular ones. You can poke around there. Sometimes you can get intros to companies through that. You'll have to pay for it, but these tools you can use, right? And I just want to show you for yourself what this can look like. So this was like a 5-minute search that I did on LinkedIn and Reddit. And the top left one, right, you can see people were paid $7,500 for technical candidates. There's a Reddit post on the top right, guy paid for his wedding with 4 referrals. The bottom one I think is really interesting because it's an example of that separate referral or that separate application process that you get when you apply warm somewhere. So it's someone who's posting saying, hey, LinkedIn, everyone I know on LinkedIn, like extended LinkedIn network, reach out to me if you want a custom application process. We use an internal referral link, right? And this is for Pinterest. So it's someone who's saying, hey, even if I don't know you that well, apply through me. Use my link, right? And then you can get into this custom track. Sweet. Okay, so I know we were talking about cold reach out to folks. So what happens if you don't have a warm contact? The biggest misconception is that people think they should reach out to the recruiter here. And it's pretty, you would think that you would want to reach out to them, right? They're the ones often listed on the job post itself. They're sort of the ones running the process. They're going to get spammed though. So if you want to stand out, I recommend either contact the hiring manager or contact someone on the team who you're uniquely well suited to reach out to. So with the hiring manager, I like to run I do it with a Google search. You can do it on LinkedIn, but if the post is for a software engineer, right, you might want to find the engineering manager at that company. This will be easier for smaller companies than for larger ones, but even at larger ones, it still shows some initiative to reach out to show that you've researched someone and tried to find the right person, right? So I gave you a Google search here. It'll be in the slides later. But find that level up from the job post. That's what I would recommend, is the person to reach out to. And very often, they're the real person hiring, right? So if you can make a good impression with them, they're actually going to dictate to the recruiter who they let in the door. So the other approach, right, and this is for more broadly folks at the company, people on the team, is if there are people who used to work at your old companies or in the industry you used to work in, you can find that through LinkedIn pretty well. So the way to do this is you search for your target company on LinkedIn. Then you also add that target company as the current company if you open that all filters section. And then you add all of the companies that were in your industry, or maybe start with the last companies you used to work at and stick that in the past company section. And at that point, your cold outreach almost writes itself, right? It's like, hey, I saw you used to work at Uber. I was at Uber also, right? And now you work at DoorDash. Could I get referred internally? Would you like to chat? That kind of thing, right? So I see there's a question on how do you find the hiring manager for a specific team? That's where I like this Google search, right? So if you look at the job posting and you can infer the team for that, what I do is, actually, maybe I'll go back to the Google search. So after the company name section here, you might type a couple keywords around that team and then type engineering manager and see who shows up. And I think Google's search algorithm is pretty good. It should generally show the right folks turning up here. Great. Okay. Next misconception here is around how you reach out. So a lot of people think you should LinkedIn DM people, maybe you buy some in-mails, right? DM them cold. A lot of folks don't check LinkedIn. Some do, but not all of them. So what I recommend is find their email instead if you can, and email them. And again, I come from a growth and marketing background. So there's some industry standard tools that marketers use to find business emails for people. And in your case, you might even be able to get away with personal emails if you can make sure that it's like you reaching out and you're not spamming folks. So Clearbit Connect is one. They give you, I think it's 100 free email lookups a month. That's the best tool that I've used for finding business emails. Contact Out is another good one. It's a Chrome extension that sits on top of the LinkedIn profile. And when you click it, you see business emails, personal emails, a whole bunch of contact info. Apollo is one that people hear about, which I think is okay. It's not as good as Clearbit in my opinion, but you can try that one too. And a couple other places you can look. A lot of folks will list contact information on their GitHub and Twitter, a couple other social media profiles too. What I'd recommend is if you can't find an email, then try to figure out where they hang out online and DM them there. So it could be that it's LinkedIn. Maybe they're really active on Instagram and they've got Instagram DMs open, right? Maybe they're on TikTok. Whatever it is, do a quick search on the person. You can literally just Google their name and see what kind of social media pops up and try to figure out where they were posting most recently and where they're most active. And again, to do the email too, but
that's a really good tip. I was going to add one thing. We personally have really good luck with LinkedIn connection requests where you send the 300 character message with your post. I have a set of slides that I'll reshare after as well that have a bunch of templates that tend to work. So that's, you have to send a lot, and your point is totally right, Asher, where if they're not on there, it doesn't really work. But if they do seem to be active on LinkedIn, that's a trick we have.
I'm muted. Sorry. Great. Yeah, I love it. I think that makes a ton of sense too. The key is you have to go where their attention is, right? And you need to make sure you're actually seen by them. So if you're DMing, if you're emailing, whatever it is, a big misconception here is that you can send a pretty formulaic email and rely on your background to do a lot of the heavy lifting. And a lot of people think that the person they're reaching out to will research them when they reach out. That's usually not the case. And you can sanity check this yourself if you've ever gotten maybe a message from a recruiter, right? I think a lot of engineers tend to get spammed by recruiters, and think about how formulaic and standard a lot of those messages look. And it reduces the trust that you have and even just how smart they are and capable they are, let alone capable in finding you a job, right? So what we want to do for you is show that you've put a little bit of work into it and that you're a capable person so that the hiring manager, team member, whoever it is, will actually respond to you, right? So how do you do this? I would give you 3 principles here to think about. The first is try to say things that normies can't. So this is where that prior industry, right, the last company you worked at comes into play. This is where researching them helps a lot. So LinkedIn socials is great. If you can say, actually one email I've personally sent before was I saw in the bio section of someone's LinkedIn that they liked dog photography. And so I photoshopped a picture of a guy I know with a bunch of dogs around him. And that got amazing responses, right, from her. So if you can find stuff like that, that's great. You can also go to unusual data sources. So if it's a public company, there's an investor relations link that you can find if you Google the company name and then the words investor relations. You can listen to earnings calls that they have. You can look up podcasts that they've been on. That's something else you can Google. What I think will also help really put you over the top is if you can offer some form of free work for them. And a lot of people push back here on, I want to get paid to do work, right? Or it's a lot of investment, so I can't do this for every company. And so that's some of where your creativity can come in. So what I recommend is make it really low effort, but still tailor it to what you know based on your research on the company and the person you're reaching out to. So for example, just because I know you're doing software engineering work, right? If you've done front-end work, maybe there's a really fast way to build a Chrome extension that improves the UI a little bit, right? Or maybe you write a few integration tests based on the public site, so you don't need any context from internally at the company to spin something up, right? There's someone I know who applied to a skateboard company by getting 50 friends of his to use the skateboard and then fill out a Google form with feedback on the product that he then reached out to the founders of the skateboard company with. And he ended up getting a job there, right? So there's a bunch of different things you can do. Tailor it based on what you know about the company and the person you're reaching out to. And that will distinguish you, and you will be saying things normies can't, because a lot of normies do not put in that work, right? They'll just send that formulaic email to someone. So here's an example. I can't see the full thing because our faces are in the way, but it's in the slides. So, hey, Justin, he's an engineering manager at DoorDash, right? Let's say I heard on a podcast that he likes dark mode. So I made a Chrome extension that lets you easily toggle dark mode on the marketing site, right? Here's the GitHub repo code. The ask at the end is if you can refer me internally. And it's pretty straightforward. It's really short, but you can see how distinctive this is. Also, the subject line matters a lot here because that's sometimes the only thing you can guarantee people will see. They may not even open your email. So if you can write a subject line that is not the subject line that they see from other people who are cold emailing them or trying to get their attention, that helps a lot. So I made you a Chrome extension. This one's actually, I'd say a 5 out of 10. If you can tie it to maybe, I should have said something like Dark UI podcast plus Chrome extension, because that shows that you actually researched him, right? In the subject immediately. So there's an example. I'll have a couple other templates later too. So around warm referrals. So how do you reach out to these warm referrals? I would put them in 3 buckets. So if you know them well, I think you already know how you're going to reach out to them. Most often this is a text. You want to keep it super casual. I'm not going to spend time on this because if you know someone well, you probably know what to do already. If you know them but not super well, that's where I do like a LinkedIn DM because it reminds them that you're connected. And you can doubly remind them with the first line of the email that you send, the DM that you send. And keep it short too, right? We're not trying to do some huge form letter that's saying, dear sir or madam, I'm trying to apply for a job at your company, yada, yada, yada. You want to say, hey, catching up, saw a job, keep it really informal and make it more of a conversation with them. If you don't know them, but you're still connected on LinkedIn, I also like a DM there, and the crutch that you can use as far as phrasing is I forget how we originally connected, but, and if they still want to help you, they'll at least go, oh, we were connected somehow. I forget how I know them, right? But at least you're still in the door in a way that you're not with a cold email, because they may not research you if they get an email from you, but they probably will click to your LinkedIn profile if they get a message from you on LinkedIn. So the other way that I would break this down is you want to tailor the ask that you make of them to the company size. So if I go back to the template I had here, if we can, yeah, thanks, Lexi. At the bottom, the ask is that question, right? Any chance you could refer me internally? That's the ask. And at larger companies, because we know there's different processes sometimes, like we saw with Pinterest, right? You might want to ask, is there a separate process for getting internally referred, right? Or you should ask, should I apply directly or can I wait for you, right? At a smaller company, it's probably going to be less formal. It might just be a Slack that someone's sending to the recruiter or something like that. So you might ask, do you know the hiring manager? Or you can directly ask if they could refer you internally. But I like to split or determine the question that you ask based on that size of the company. Great. I know we have a question on how we would approach researching a company we want to join, but there's no listed employees on LinkedIn. There's no info or job openings on the website and little publicly available information. I think I'd need more context on this one around how you discovered that company in the first place. That one might be a hard one, honestly. I don't know if I have a clear answer for you. I'd probably need more details.
I'll just jump in quickly. I think that sort of thing happened on AngelList a lot when we used to work there. Sometimes, I don't know if it's a crypto company. Sometimes that's the case with those more than others. But if there's no one on the LinkedIn, yeah, feel free to send a follow-up and we can go kind of investigate. But I would say if it's not a crypto company, the likelihood that it's a full-time job with salary is potentially low. So.
One other idea here, just spitballing, is if you know who the founder of the company is, you can at least research the founder. And if you found them on social, right, they probably have some kind of stuff they've been posting about on social. So maybe you build off of that if you don't have any more data. Cool. I'm going to keep rolling. So here's a few templates, right? So if you know them well, text is better than DM. If you want some language, here's some language. It'll be in the slides. It's really short, right? Hey, saw a job post on the company website. Do you know the right person? That's really should be that simple. That is how many Warmer Jobs users have started the job search process here. If you know them sort of well, here's a template for that. Again, reference that shared memory that you have with them. Mention that you saw the job post on the site. Shows that you've done a little research. It makes it easy for them to validate what you're saying. And then ask for that referral, right? The other big important piece of this is follow up if you haven't heard from them, right? So I know we talked about that roughly 2-day rule of thumb for when you want to actually apply. That means a day after you first reach out, you should follow up and try to do it in a different place than where you first reached out. So if you first emailed them, I would then send them a LinkedIn DM, right? Or send them that Instagram DM, whatever it is. Do it on a different channel because you have more of a chance of getting in front of them and say something like, hey, I sent you a message on LinkedIn, but I know not everyone checks it. Then they'll go check their LinkedIn. They'll get all the context there. Last one, right? If you don't know them, here's the I forget how we originally connected message. Again, super short. What we don't want to do is overwhelm people with a lot of information because then they're just not going to read it. They're going to go, this is too much for right now. I don't have time. They mark it as read and they move on. We need to make sure that they actually see and respond to what you wrote. And just to reiterate, follow up. So I had a call a few weeks ago with someone who said on the call with me, he does not respond to emails until someone follows up because it was, quote, proof that they actually wanted to talk to him. I don't know how much I agree with that philosophy, but I just want you to know that people like that are out there. And so this is another case where you may not even get in the door unless you follow up. Not saying he's also like the norm here, but very, very.
No, I mean, we talk about this in the community as well. I have told people, first of all, it feels super unnatural, right? But in sales, it's normal. You're supposed to email somebody 6 times before you take them off your list, which like sounds like a lot, but it is what it is. That's like the industry best practice. I also tell folks, follow up until you're going to know. I mean, not like 100 times, but especially if you're kind of close, you have a bite, it's okay to follow up until you're going to know.
See, there's a question around, does the short message apply even when it's a recruiter too? I would say in most cases, yes, because they're still getting spammed with all kinds of emails that are going to look formulaic and long and these walls of text, right? They may not have time for. So I would recommend yes. The only exception to that is if you're in an industry where people tend to talk in more of a, I don't know, professional way, like maybe banking is an example, and this is a little out of my wheelhouse, so I haven't seen as many examples of this. But if you think, or academia might be another one, is if they expect you to talk a certain way, then it makes sense to do that. But I'd prioritize attention. Lexi,
I will say one thing in our templates for LinkedIn, we have little like personalization details to like show them that you're qualified. So we will say like, quickly mention that you're a front end engineer in San Francisco with 6 years of experience to like make it clear that they should respond to you. But we can share all the templates after, and it's good to use a mix.
Agreed. And again, this is part of saying things that normies can't write. Like think about the other emails they're getting, and you need to make sure that you're standing out immediately in whatever email they're seeing. And if they're getting a lot of emails from people with 6 years of software engineering experience in San Francisco, then you're out of luck. So sometimes you don't have perfect data on this, right? But try to think about what would actually look unique. And that usually comes from your own unique background that other people can't say too. So overall, what's the process? Find warm postings, find the best contacts, reach out, follow up. And just to tie things up, I mentioned I'd talk about the tool I'm building a bit. It's called Warmer Jobs. The goal is to show you the jobs where you can get warm intros. Shows up in a spreadsheet for you. It's based on your LinkedIn connections. Because you're coming through Leopard, I want to give you direct sign-up access to the alpha product and a free trial. So if you visit app.warmerjobs.com, you can sign up. Use the code Leopard free trial for a free, sort of a light search. It's not going to comprehensively scrape all the sites the way a main plan does, but it's enough to get a feel for how it works. You can also use the code Leopard20 for 20% off any paid plans, and you'll get an email from me, or at least I think it's on the slides. But I'll make sure you have my contact info if you've got any questions around it too.
Yeah, and Asher, we can also add you to our community Slack for like a little bit to just let anybody ask you questions asynchronous on the thread. Whenever we do workshops like this and we have templates or follow-ups, I always say, feel free to drop us your template and we can let you know your note, and we'll give you live workshop feedback. It's kind of a fun way to make sure people actually try it on the day or they'll forget. But yeah, we have like 15 minutes. I would love to know anybody else's questions. Feel free to write them in the chat and I'll start to pull some things out of it. But I had one question. I mean, you mentioned myths. I'm just wondering if there are any other kind of like common mistakes you see with people using the product or trying to do referrals in general. Not like misconceptions, but like little goofs.
Yeah, let me think. This one's not as specific to the product, but it just jumped to mind. And actually, there's a good hack here that I think folks will like, which is around the writing style when you reach out. So some people don't know the right tone to take, or it's hard to write in that sort of informal way that gets your email or DM read. There's a chat GPT prompt that I really like that I've sent to a number of people. That one guy actually used, English was not his first language, but he landed a marketing job at a YC startup by using a version of this. So let me see if I can find the prompt exactly. It's something like, rewrite this text to be concise in the style of Paul Graham, and then you put the text. And for whatever reason, ChatGPT is really good at that. And if you ask me in the Leopard Slack or afterwards, I'll try to dig up the real prompt, but it's something like that.
I do that too. I tone things. Well, I write enough online, but I ask it to tone it like myself, or I like pick people I like their writing style. So I'll be like, combine Paul Graham and Sheryl Sandberg and Kamala and like a writer. And that tends to be really good. A couple others before I forget. I always ask it to remove adjectives. I think that like cuts it down a lot. And then I'm like, not flowery. And it tends to be good. No other questions in the chat? I was expecting a little bit more. If you don't have a question, give us some feedback, thoughts, anything. Talk to us. We have 10, 15 minutes. Otherwise, we'll wrap. I think we got a lot of good sound bites at least. So we can turn some of these into shorter clips, Asher, and share kind of little tips and tricks. But otherwise, we'll switch over to Slack, and I'd love to read folks' templates. Do people want to do that right after this and sort of like write up something for us to review? Does that feel like a good place to land? Liked it. Yeah, totally. I do too. I think it's really empowering to know that you have a channel that gets higher replies. Love it. Yep, totally. Okay. I was like thinking if there were any other sound bites I wanted to get before we go. Let's try one and then we'll hop. I probably should have prepared you in advance. Oh, there's a question. Do you have any advice for finding the hidden jobs that might not be advertised on LinkedIn?
I don't know if I can tell you things you don't know around this, but I think what I see most people do, well, I guess a few things that I've seen people do. One is you put a public post on LinkedIn that you are looking for work if you're comfortable sharing that you're job searching, right? The other thing is an email that goes out to friends and family also saying that you're job searching. Some people will make a little Notion page with information about them and a picture, and it's not like a resume, it's not a cover letter, but there's a little bit on them, maybe their values, that kind of thing.
I have a couple more.
Yeah,
a couple more is, one that's like not rocket science, but anytime a company's raised funding recently, that tends to be a good signal that they have some cash. That's something clients say a lot. We will probably be raising a round in the next 3 to 6 months, and then we'll have some new headcount, or we just raised. So Crunchbase is a good place to find that stuff. You can also just go to TechCrunch or, Google recently funded companies and look that way. If you want to get really kind of creative, I've told folks this kind of one-on-one, but you can look for companies that don't have a big engineering team. You can look on LinkedIn, look at the head of engineering and see that there's only one software engineer or 5, or if it's not that many, maybe they want more, right? You could also look like if you're an iOS engineer and they only have one iOS person, but it's a mobile first company. So those are all the kind of tricks our team will use. There was a question about a demo. Asher, did you see that one?
Yeah, I think so. A couple of things you can do. One is go to warmerjobs.com and you'll see a bunch of screenshots of the product in action. There's also a YouTube video that I can send that's going to be me doing a very hacky demo, but at least you'll see a bunch of how it works on there too. So I can send that out. I'll make it up.
And then there was another question. Watching it. There's a couple good ones here. Okay. I like this. Many of us have been in the job market for over a year and feel like we've tried everything. Do you have anything you would prioritize if you're close to burning out and limited on time?
So in marketing, and I think in product management too, there's a framework called the RICE framework, which stands for reach, impact, confidence, and ease. What I would say is I would ignore 2 of those. I would just go for like good reach and high ease. Like what is easy and reaches a lot of people. So that email blast plus that public post blast with you and what you're looking for. Hopefully it's like, okay, it's maybe an hour of work to set that up. Then you send it out and then you wait for things to filter in from it. If you haven't done that yet, again, without any extra context, that's where I would probably start.
No, I think that's a good tip. Or just, posting if anybody in my network wants to catch up about their team. I don't know. We love a call, CTA. If anybody wants to catch up, chat, walk, Zoom, whatever, I find people who want to catch up tend to have some need. Somebody said, watching this on behalf of a friend who isn't in Leopard. A friend is having trouble getting rejected even when he's referred. What might be going on? Not sure if this means his resume or portfolio isn't strong enough, or if it's just a tough market.
Do we know, is this at the interview phase or is this before the interview? Like, are they having trouble getting interviews or are they having trouble after the interview?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And I'll assume before if I don't hear an answer.
While we wait for that answer, I will say I approach things the same way as you do, Asher. I think like I encourage folks to look at their own funnel, and it can be really hard in the job market when you don't get feedback. Some Leopard members in the past, we have a wins channel where people say all the things that worked for them or not. There's an answer we'll get to in a second, but somebody in the wins channel said that they give themselves feedback after each interview and they write it down. They try to zoom out and say, oh, what would I have potentially done differently? That's the interview piece. But even in the outreach piece, you can kind of, I know that's not really the question, but do a self-assessment as if you were somebody on the other side, or ask ChatGPT to take a guess. And rather than being like, oh, I'm stuck. Usually there's always positioning improvements you can make, not just as a job seeker in general, but yeah, Asher, go ahead.
I'll throw one more in there too, which is this is a good excuse for some cold outreach. So if there's a designer at a company, or maybe ideally it's a first or second degree connection at a company, right, who's a designer, and reach out and say, hey, I've been struggling getting interviews for design roles at startups. Do you mind? Can you pretend like I applied to you and just like act like you would act? I think that would be a good route too.
Yeah. Yeah. Or even asking, I would say, yeah, asking first degrees as well. Product, sometimes I get messages, my resume isn't clicking. Can you tell me what you think might not be working? And so asking your first degree connections, and I would say it's, my takeaway on referrals in the last 6 months has been like, and you said this, but you never know exactly who might help you. And so if you're going to ask for feedback, you can go a little wider. You can ask folks in tech, like maybe your friend who you haven't talked to in 10 years is going to have good feedback. And so I always think when in doubt, ask people for help. Anything else? I'm just double checking on the LinkedIn. Would love feedback on this format. If we liked LinkedIn versus Zoom, we're going to have the recording. Asher, I'll add you to the announcements channel and we'll make a little thread where people can ask. But I think this was really fun. And, we use the Warmer Jobs product too for referrals. So if you have any questions on how we use it, maybe we do a part 2 where we live workshop in a smaller format, like on Zoom, and actually we do that with resumes. We're like, here's what I've got. What would you do? So yeah, this was super fun. Thank you, everybody. And I'm going to go add Asher to our Slack. So see you there. Thank you all. Give some nice words on the comments before we go so that Asher sees them and feels good about this talk. If you can't.
Thanks all. You do not need to stroke my ego.
Yeah. Crickets are very stressful when you're doing things. You're like, is this who is there? Was this working? It's going to, also there's a little delay. I don't know if you're noticing that, it's comments will explode in for okay, there we go. They're coming. Okay. There we go. Okay. Thanks everybody so much. And see you in Slack. Okay. Bye. You are awesome. Don't miss that one. You are awesome. Okay. All right. Bye.